Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Big East Rewind. I'm your host, Chuck Everson, and my point guard, and we're all talking old school, so we know that at least now I know Sonny's going to feed the post a little bit, which is great. So Sonny Spera from Syracuse University is with us, and today's a big day, Sonny.
Big day.
It's not every day you get a Hall of Famer to come on and talk hoops with us. I know you're excited. I know you know this guy pretty well. For the last 30 some years, right? So why don't you do the honors and introduce Coach?
All right. Well, we hit on a couple of big ones, but I don't know if people understand Coach Boeheim, his history, and went from student athlete to assistant coach to, I think, full-time assistant and then head coach, and has stayed and has made a tremendous career, and probably the biggest thing in Syracuse ever is Coach Boeheim.
Not a lot now. Biggest thing in Syracuse.
Come on. But you know what's a beautiful thing, Coach, and I don't know if you get enough credit for, is that loyalty and that foundation of Syracuse. There's never a grass is greener. You think, I think anyway, that you see it as I'm in the best place I could ever be. And I think that's
– I'm from upstate, an hour away, and I just have always felt this is a great place. We have great fans. It's a great place to live. I've really never considered any place else in terms of another place, or maybe nobody else ever wanted me. But you could put it both ways, I'm sure. But starting out here as a player, then a grad assistant coach, head coach, it just everything fell into place. The Big East started, and we went from, kind of just being an Eastern school and no real identity. There were 30, 40 Eastern schools that were just as good as we were, whether it was St. Bonaventure, Canisius, Niagara, Holy Cross, Seton Hall. You could just go to LaSalle. Everybody was the same. Everybody was the same, and then Dave Gavitt decided, let's get this league going, and we all just bought it, but because we didn't know better. But Dave put this league together, and it was overnight became one of the best leagues in the country overnight in a year or two. And partly because of the markets, partly because Patrick and Chris Mullen came into the league, Patrick Ewing, Pearl Washington, and all of a sudden, you're on ESPN, get started. We're on national TV in California when no Pac-10 schools at that time were on TV. So we got California. We had 6 California kids at one time because they saw us play. So everything came together, and everything changed. We were not ever really considered a top program at that time. We weren't even in the top 30. And all of a sudden, overnight, you have teams in the top 10 in the country. And it was all from the formation of the Big East Conference with Dave Gavitt.
Coach, we had to do some of our homework, right?
I hope so.
So we had to. So
we didn't do any while he was in school, Coach. So we had to do some here.
So we're making up. We're getting older. We're figuring.
I'll take Sonny's GPA against yours, Chuck.
So would I. I would take that too.
So we looked it up, and we found out like you were a pretty good little league player. You and your mom were a pair of bridge players that won some tournaments. How did you get into all those different things?
Well, I was a bridge player, but that's faulty. I didn't win any tournaments. My father was a life master in bridge, as was my mother, and played tournaments all over the country. I learned how to play and could play, but not that level. And of course, now you can't find anybody that plays bridge. So I haven't played bridge in years. I don't even know anybody that plays bridge. But yeah, I was a decent baseball player, not great, and played golf, obviously, which is still my favorite sport of mine. It's a great sport. Still play. I play 9 holes every night, but I play at 7 o'clock at night so nobody can see what I'm doing, and I don't have to turn any scores in. It's the only way golf is fun. If you hit a bad shot, you hit another one. Drop one, hit another one. So never have a bad round. It's kind of fun. But it was I was able to do a lot of things. I had really good parents. They helped. They support everything I did. I went to one of the first basketball camps in the country when I was in ninth grade, Dolph Shays. I think there were two. Red Auerbach had a camp and Dolph Shays had a camp. Those were the two basketball camps in the country at that time. And it was interesting. It was a great experience. The whole Syracuse Nats team was there. College players, Pete Maravich was a counselor up at camp, at Dolph's camp. It was a great experience. I learned a lot.
So you started out. Now you come out and you played at Syracuse as well, because the manager for your team was the guy that handled all my recruiting, was Steve Rochester. So that was the guy that I know you were close with, and I know you roomed with the great Dave Bing. Tell us about your college career playing at SU.
Well, I was a walk-on, which means you weren't good enough to get a scholarship, and they had 7 guys on scholarship on the freshman team. We didn't have a freshman played freshman ball then. So I worked my way up on the freshman team and played a lot. And then one guy got thrown out of school, and I got his scholarship for my sophomore year. And I played quite a bit as a sophomore, and then a lot as a junior and senior. Started those 2 years, and we got to the sweet. Where did we get to? Yeah, Sweet 16. We lost in the final of the regional to Duke, and that's the year the Texas Western won, 66. But we led Duke by 5 with about 5 or 6 minutes to go and just couldn't hang on. They were good. They had a really good team. And they ended up losing to Kentucky in the first round of the Final Four, when their best player got sick and couldn't play. He had 27 against us. But I thought Duke might have been the best team that year. But it was a great run. And the next year I came back and started as a grad assistant and played in the weekend in the Eastern League. At that time there were 12 NBA teams and 12 Eastern League teams. So really good league, and played there for a year. Then the next year the ABA started, and all the really good players left the Eastern League. So I went from being an average player to one of the better players in the league, and played Saturday and Sunday night and made a couple $100 each game. And it was a lot of money in those days. And during the week, I coached the freshman team, worked with the varsity, and then eventually became a full-time assistant, and did that for 4 years. And then all of a sudden the head coach left and I got the job. It was pretty things timed out pretty good for me.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Now, Steve tells me a story that Dave was your roommate, and he also was the guy that inducted you into the Hall of Fame, right? He came up on stage with you for the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Tell the story about Thanksgiving dinner at your folks' house with Dave.
Well, we took a bunch of people to my house, and Dave and a kid from New Jersey, Frank Nicoletti, another kid from New York. And of course, I don't think they fully realized. I mean, I think they knew that my father was in the funeral business. So we were sitting at the kitchen table, and there's a door right there. And I said to Dave, I said, I forgot what it was. We needed a chair. There's a chair right there. So he went in. It was the room that we prepare the bodies in, and there was a body in there, and Dave got a little squeamish. He came running out of there. But yeah, they weren't quite ready for that. But yeah, that was a fun, a little fun.
Yeah, he tells that story quite often. That's great. That's good stuff. So now you get in. Now, if the Big East is at its infancy, right? And when you first started, it wasn't really the Big East yet, right?
No, we had a good program. I had a great recruiting class my first year. Roosevelt Bowie and Louis Orr came in, and
yeah,
we had some good players. So we went 26-4. Really good run right off the bat. But there was no Big East, and you were just independent. And we had really good years because those guys stayed all 4 years. They didn't leave. So we had 4 good years. We won 100 games in 4 years. In the 4th year, the Big East started. We had a really good year. Finished tied for first, and the league exploded. And we were fortunate to get off to such a great start because we had we had great players. College basketball isn't about a little coaching, but it's about players. If you get good players, you have a chance to win. And I start out with really good players right away. And they were great kids. They worked hard. We never had any discipline or issues. And everybody went to class. You didn't have all the tutoring you have today. And everybody on our teams had 2.8s or 3.0s. And with no tutoring, no help. Now we have wall-to-wall tutoring and help and everything. And academic people, we have a academic lady who travels with us to all our games and tournaments, everything. So it was different then, but I was lucky. I got off to a great start.
Let's stay on that for a second, Coach. I mean, with the advent of social media and all the things that are a distraction for these guys that you're coaching, when you go on the road and when you're around, I mean, what do you do to kind of keep these guys together, focused on the goal at hand to win the game?
Well, we travel together, we charter, so we're always together. We eat together. We don't really go out. This year we didn't go out at all.
Right. Well, yeah.
In the hotel, but we usually don't. We usually go in late. We eat dinner, stayed in the hotel, have meetings in the hotel, then we go to the game, play the game, and fly out after the game. But we do everything together. Our practices, our meals, a lot of the meals are together. Our players live together in the same complex. So you're trying to encourage that. And players generally, through the years, hang out with each other. I mean, even when we lived in different spots, guys always were together. That's part of the basketball. During the summer we're here, nobody up here, just our team. During Christmas, you're here, the whole school's closed down. So your whole team is here for almost 30 days with no one on campus.
Right.
And of course, this year was even more isolated. But your team does get to spend a lot of time together, and that helps. I mean, that all helps. Every 4 years, you take a summer trip to Europe or someplace and play games, and you bond on that trip. That always helps your team when you come back. Social media is there, but there's so much negativity on it that you try.
That's my point. Yeah, that's what I was asking about. How do you?
This year we were struggling. We were 10-6 or whatever we were, and really struggling. And it looked like we weren't going to get in the tournament and weren't going to go to the NIT or nothing, no tournament. And these guys, they saw that. I think some of them think it motivates them a little bit to show people. I think that's true in some sense. But we pulled together. We got a little run late and played really well in the tournament. And, that's what the goal is, to get in the tournament. And then the goal is to play well in the tournament. So even though we had a little bit of a down year, we played well in the tournament and got to the Sweet 16. We've done that 3 times in the last 7 years where we didn't have great years, but we got to the Sweet 16 and we got the Final Four once in that run. So it's still how you play in the tournament is what people remember. Illinois had a great year this year. They lost in the second round. That's what they're talking about at Illinois. It's just the way it is. There's so much emphasis put on the tournament. But we overcame that. That's always a good thing when your team can be struggling. And as we were young, we lost our center the first game of the year, so we had to play a forward at center. We were small. We, 6'9", 200-pound center, 6'5" forward. We weren't big, and it hurts our defense a little bit. We lost a lot of guys. We're going to actually be bigger next year because we brought in some 2'6" guys. And
you got a kid from Nova. That's a great kid and can really shoot the ball, Coach.
He really shoots it. I love the kid. We recruited him very hard in high school, and we were next to last school, probably, which finished in second never helps, but it helped us this time a little bit because we were right there. and he's a shooter. Nova's more of a man-to-man pressure team, and that wasn't suited for Cole's game. He couldn't stay on the court long enough because of the defensive end, and offensively, he didn't get many shots, and he shot 40% from the three, which is very hard to do when you only get a couple shots a game and you shoot 40%. That's hard to do. So we think he's going to be a good fit, and he's gotten bigger and stronger. And, he and my son Jimmy give us 2 6'9" forwards that weigh 230 pounds that we didn't have. So I think that will help our team next year. And got a 7-footed center who's a sophomore, and he's starting to come into his own. He's starting to get there. So we'll be bigger, got our guards back. So it'll be an interesting team next year.
So let's go back to when the Big East started, Coach, because that was, you talk about Dave Gavitt, and we've had a lot of people really reference his importance and his impact, not just on forming the league, but also forming relationships, like putting coaches and ADs together and making people, and like the Big East, the luncheon where you sat with it as a player, we sat with all the different teams and stuff. And it sounded like he really wanted to have a social component as well.
Well, he would take coaches that were fighting and put them in the same golf cart.
Yeah.
That's what Bill Raftery said too.
Screaming at each other, and they're in the same golf cart. Now, then they'd put their wives and them together at dinner. So, I mean, sooner or later, you got to, and it worked. I mean, I saw guys ready to punch each other that came away from those meetings, reasonably in a good spirit. And Dave was able to do that. He would, if that was tried today, the coaches would just say, no, I'm not doing it. And then Dave Gavitt said, you did this, you did it. We all went into the league, Big John and I, we didn't want to go into the league, but, the only reason John Thompson went in the league and Georgetown went in the league, then we fouled, is because Dave Gavitt convinced him it was the right thing. And once John came in and Louis, it was kind of a done deal. Providence was in, we were going to be in. So those were the 4 schools. And then, but Dave did all that, and he kept it going. Then he trained Mike Tranghese, did a lot of the daily work. And then when Dave Gavitt left, Mike was ready to take over, and he knew all the things that Dave did. He just followed the blueprint. And until football broke the Big East, everything was great. We were the number 1 league and would have been the number 1 league if it wasn't for football. But, you had to take care of football. It's too big of a part of the budget. If you don't have football, you're losing millions of dollars if you don't have good football. So that was the move to the ACC, and it's also a good basketball league, but it was a football move. But we had a great run in the Big East. I think Dave Gavitt saw it coming when he left to be with the Celtics. I think Mike Tranghese saw it coming. And the Big East has survived. It's a very good league right now, but Jay Wright will tell you it'll never be what it was, but it's still a heck of a league.
Yeah.
And, and the ACC is a great league. So we came out of it where we had to because of football. And it's been a good relationship with us. But the Big East was an unbelievable time. The 6th place team in the league could win the championship. We had 11 teams go to the tournament one year. I mean, it was just an unbelievable league, and to just compete in the league, you had to be really good. I think one of the things I'm proudest of, we went to 16 or 17 Big East finals tournament, and nobody was even within 10 of that, probably 8 or 10 of that. So we had great teams, great consistency, and our fans always loved going to New York. It was a great experience, and they still talk about going to New York, and that was, 8-10 years ago since we left the league. So nothing like playing the Big East tournament in Madison Square Garden. The fans were there for every game. ACC tournament's good, but the fans don't go to the first round, second. There's almost nobody there. But the Big East, they were there every game.
The Garden was packed. That's right.
It was an atmosphere like I've never seen. You were sold out even in the first couple rounds, and then you get to the semifinals, and I mean, it was just packed, and even in the finals, same thing. It was, sold out Garden. That was an unbelievable experience to, look across and see all the national, Mike Wilbon's there, Tony Kornheiser. You see all the national writers there, and I mean, it was an unbelievable experience walking out on the Garden floor, and the electricity in the building was unlike anything I've ever seen and probably will ever see.
Now, the first year it was in Syracuse, right? Or was that the second year?
I think it was the second. The first year we were in Providence.
Providence.
In the finals to Georgetown, and then we came to Syracuse, and we beat Villanova in triple overtime.
Yep.
And unbelievable game. And I think that was the second year. Connecticut was in there one year.
Yeah, then Hartford went to me.
Hartford, and then we went to back to the Garden.
Did you see that coming? Did you see like the Garden as the had to, or did you? Or, I mean, I would think.
Yeah, it was pretty much Dave Gavitt again. He saw that. I think we were a little, you were a little bit suspect because it's St. John's plays their home game there, but as it turned out, they only won once or maybe twice in all the history of the Garden. So, it became a pretty much. Our fans would generally be there more than anybody's. We usually have more fans. A lot of fans went from Syracuse with no tickets and just hoped they could get in. And, we sold all our tickets and bought tickets. So we always had 4,000 tickets there. And then our fans just bought up when people lost and went home. They just bought all the tickets. So, and we had tons of fans that just went to New York City and went to a bar and watched the games on TV down there.
Just to be around it, right, Coach? Yeah. I mean, that's how exciting it was.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you can't really describe it, if you weren't there. It was just, it was like the Dome during those days when anybody, Villanova or Georgetown, especially Georgetown, but St. John's, Connecticut, it'd be 30,000 people here, and it would be just on fire. And it was just, that was just a time. It was a 10-year period there that was like none other in college basketball. And you had great players. Players stayed 4 years. I remember one year I looked out and Georgetown had 7 NBA players on their roster, and we had 6 when we were playing them. They were all still there in school. 13 NBA players. Reggie Williams was coming off the bench for Georgetown. He was played great in the NBA. It was a different league. The last place team one year was Providence. They had Otis Thorpe and Ray Knight and really good guards, and they were in last place. And Otis Thorpe played in the NBA for 15 years. It was just an incredible run of great players and great teams, great games. And, you had, Dave Gavitt helped get us all in the Hall of Fame, but you had John Thompson, you had Rowley, who should be in the Hall of Fame. You had Jim Calhoun, you had Rick Pitino, you had Gary Williams, you had 4 from Lou Carnesecca. So you had 5 or 6 guys in the Hall of Fame, and you had other guys who were really close to being in the Hall of Fame.
So speaking of the Big East, the tournament, I got to ask you about this because we had Froggy on, we had Michael Graham on. We had Gene Smith, Billy Martin from Georgetown, and we had Andre and the '84 Pearl's freshman year in the Big East tournament, and Pearl. It's electric. In that game, there was that incident between Michael and Andre, and both guys talked about it. It actually turned out to be a lot of fun, and Paparo talked a little bit. What do you recollect?
I know exactly what happened. I don't know if Froggy usually Froggy tells the truth. But what happened on the play, we were up, whatever, we were up 5 or 4. We were pretty good, but there was a minute and something to go. And Jody Sylvester called a foul on Michael Graham under the basket. It was a foul. It was just, simplified foul on Andre. And then Michael Graham punched Andre. So Froggy came in and called a technical for the punch and threw him out of the game. Well, Larry Lembo was the crew chief, got them together. Jody said, no, I didn't call a foul. which he did. And Larry said, well, then, okay, we just got a foul on Michael Graham coming in here. No ejection, when it was clearly an ejection. So we shot a 1-and-1 instead of shooting a 2-shot technical 1-and-1 and having the ball.
Get the ball
game
back.
would have
Yeah.
been over. So Andre made the 1-and-1, so it gave us about a 4 or 5 point lead, but they got the ball and they scored to make it 2 or something, and then they tied it up. Well, it should have been a 7-point lead with the ball out of bounds with about 45 seconds to go. The game would have been over. But Jody Sylvester said, no, I didn't call the foul, which he did. We got it on tape, him calling a foul, raising his arm in the foul. But that's what happened. That's what happened in the game.
Well, I will tell you the truth. Froggy did say I threw him. I came in and ejected because it was a punch.
He did.
And he said he was overruled because there was no contact on the punch. It was a swing and a miss.
Doesn't matter. If you throw a punch, you're out. That's the rule. I mean,
But
but Jody's the one that really, he said, I didn't call a foul when he had called a foul.
Yeah.
Art Highland went right in the locker room, who was the supervisor official, and Jody, you raised your arm, you called a foul. And, and that was it. But, that's the way it goes sometimes. But, in at the end of game situations, today they would have hit on video. They would have seen the raised arm and the foul, and then they would have seen the punch, and it would have all been. That's the good thing about having instant replay. You can get those things exactly right at the end of games. And sometimes it's confusing or it takes time, but if it gets it right, then that's a good thing.
It's worth having.
Any other memories that come to mind, Coach? I know the 6 overtime game with Connecticut is a special time. Any other things you could think of in terms of the tournament at the Big East in the Garden?
Just the electricity in the Garden when you walked out for the championship game. We
out through that tunnel, right?
We played against Georgetown, Connecticut, St. John's, Villanova. We played against West Virginia. We played against Pittsburgh. We played against 6 different schools. We played, I think, Seton Hall one year, 7. And everybody had a shot at it. I mean, we played against 7 different teams in the Big East championship game that I can remember off the top of my head. There might have been another one thrown in there. I'm not sure. It might have been Providence or somebody. But the electricity in the Garden. And the 6 overtime games are always going to be there. We started at 9:20, we ended at 1:10. The games started at a little after 9. I think it was 9:20 and went to 1:20. It was almost 4 hours. It was close. It might have been 4. And it was we were behind in the first 5 overtimes. That's what we never had the lead in the first 5 overtimes. We were down 4. I think we were down 6 in one of them. Andy Roundshead hit a 3 with 16 seconds to go to get us into one. Connecticut had the last shot 3 times, I think, to win the game, and we never got the lead to the 6th overtime. I mean,
Sean McDonough talked about it. And speaking of the replay, he said the shot that Eric hit, which won it.
Yeah.
They had because of the film coverage. He said they had a guy with a handheld camera. And it just showed just light finger contact, right?
I've never heard that from Sean. I'm good friends with him. He never did tell me that.
He talked about it.
What I told Eric is I said that's the best call, if it did go against us, that we ever got, because it made history. It went from oh, that's a good game to history. People all over the country weren't watching that game. They got home at 11:30 or 12 from wherever they were. They started watching it. I've heard stories, Bob Costas was in Hawaii waiting to go out for dinner.
Yep.
And he just waited and he waited and he waited and, until whatever. People, the funniest thing was the 4 guys behind me going, Coach, we got to catch the last train, 1:00. I says, you're going to miss it. You're not going to get the last train tonight. Like, I care about you getting the last train. But, it's always, it's good to win that game, because if Calhoun had won, he'd be talking about it every day. but he didn't. He never talks about it. He won't talk about it. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't anywhere near the most important game or anything because it was just a tournament game. Although we did need, it helped us to win it, I think, that year. But I mean, it's still the game that you remember. You'll always remember. I mean, it was. I think Johnny Flynn made 16 straight free throws in the game,
Wow.
and if he'd have missed any of the last 8, we would have lost. Any one of them.
Unbelievable.
It's incredible. Incredible
Yeah,
performance.
awesome. Now, everybody knows about the big rivalry and how it started. I'm not going to ask you to go through that again and get you aggravated, Coach. You know, I like you too much. But talk about how deep that went. I mean, you know, the guys from Georgetown and the guys that we've had on that played for you also went into that a little bit. Give me your perspective of that whole thing with Georgetown.
Well, what happened was we both were at the top of our game. So right away, you're playing in the most important game every year there for a few years. I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it was. You know, it was us and Georgetown. And later we had great rivalries with Villanova or Connecticut or Pittsburgh came in, Seton Hall for a while, but in St. John, you know, but for a while it was Syracuse, Georgetown. In the beginning, I mean, because everything was so new and, you know, John's mentality was us against them. And so they were physical and they had fights with everyone. It wasn't just us. I mean, they had fights with Villanova. They had fights with Providence. They went 4 games in a row where they had a fight.
Coach, you know what they call it? There was an incident. That's it. They refer to it as like, yeah, a little something happened.
I mean, they had a fight with everybody. They had a fight with every team in the league.
They said they're used to it. Yeah.
And they actually made a rule, which was good. If you get in a fight, you're done. And that kind of calmed things down for a while. And but yeah, I mean, it was physical. There was a lot of bad blood. There were a lot of important games. And whenever that happens, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it lasted for a while, 5 or 6 years, and then it between John and I, it calmed down a little bit. We talked, we kind of de-escalated a little bit, but it was still I mean, the rival game. It's still, even though they're not in our league, it's still a big game. You know, we both want to win. It's just not as important as it used to be.
Right.
But for a while there, it was as bitter as it can be. It was the toughest rivalry. It went beyond Duke and Carolina. Duke and Carolina is an unbelievable rivalry, but in terms of just going all out after it, the referees that worked the games were the top refs were Timmy Higgins from New York, Jim Burr. You know, there was a couple other guys. Those were 2 of the top guys, and you know, John Cab. There were, and they said they worked in both leagues, and they said there's nothing like this game. This game is like working 10 games. It's just and it was just it was a battle, and you had to be physical or you couldn't last. You either were going to be physical when you played them or you were going to get beat. And it took a while for the league to catch up to. We were good, so we were there. But you know, Villanova, Seton Hall, those schools, they all had to come up to get to Georgetown, and they did. They all came up, and the league was better because of it. But it was a fierce rivalry. The best story I've ever heard, when Georgetown went to China and had that brawl over there with the Chinese team in the summertime, they were at a bar in Washington, and the guys were talking in there, and Georgetown's fans were talking about it, and they said, well, what the heck started this in China? And the bartender said, Syracuse guy started.
That's great.
I had not heard. That's great.
Coach, you talked about Coach Thompson a little bit. All the coaches back then, you guys were like rock stars. I mean, you had Louis Carnesecca, you had Rolly Massimino, yourself, Big John, you know, PJ was a character. You know, talk about the characters that we had in the league as coaches, and you know, and what they did to bring the league up.
Well, you had all those guys, and you had Rick Pitino came in at Providence for a while. You know, obviously Gary Williams then took over there. Paul Evans was a character at Pittsburgh. You know, it was about the coaches. I mean, they were great players, but it was really, the stories were always pretty much about the coaches. Jim Calhoun, I mean, you know, Hall of Fame coaches, but also big personality guys, you know, that would say what, you know, was on their mind and weren't afraid of anything. You know, Rowley, Louis. I mean, it was an unbelievable coaches league, and all the coaches were there for a while. You know, coaches don't last as long in one place anymore. So it was a coaches league. You know, that's what people talked about. And it was the league meetings with all the coaches. There were a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming, a lot of bad words were said in those rooms. And there were close to fights in that room. And, you know, Dave Gavitt wouldn't be in the room because he knew it was going to be bad. Then he'd come in at the end and try to make peace with everybody. But it was, we had 12-hour meetings on different things and referees. And at one meeting, every coach wanted to ban one ref, and it would have been the 12 top refs in the league would have been banned. And at the end, we just said, look, well, these are the 12 best refs. Who's gonna ref these games? You know, Rolly didn't like this guy, John didn't like, I didn't like, you know, everybody didn't like one, and they were the top refs. So it was like, Louis had it right. He said, just don't worry about it. Let the supervisor take care of the refs. So then we stopped talking. We used to talk 12, 14 hours on the referees.
Wow.
And at the end, last year, some coach, when I was in it, a young coach wanted to bring up the referees. I said, he wanted to bring up the referees. I said, no, we don't talk about it. The supervisor gets the ref. Oh, okay. That was it. So we cut our meetings from 2 days, 3-day meetings to 1 day, and then we cut down to one afternoon because don't talk about something like that. It's not going to help.
It's efficiency. That's all. That's just efficient.
Yeah.
How about when you look down the other end of the bench to the other sideline? Was there one particular guy other than Thompson that you said, oh, I'm going to go at it with this guy at some point during the game?
You know, I tried that when I was very young. I did that. There was some of that back and forth. Then I realized that, you know, coaches, we don't have that many friends. You know, when it really comes down to it, and even people you think are your friends aren't necessarily your friends when you're losing. So you better try to keep in good shape with your coaches, with other coaches. And, you know, so I just would not fight with coaches. I just wouldn't. And I never did. And John and I got it all straightened out too. All the guys in our league were good friends of mine, still are good friends of mine, whether it's PJ or Gary or Rick. You know, I just wouldn't go there. And it's just not productive. And, you know, our fans, they don't like other fans. That's okay. I get that. But pretty much the players grow up with each other today in AU basketball. They play against each other all through high school. So they kind of know each other, and they really do all get along pretty well. There's not too much bitterness there, which I think is good, because I think in the beginning it was just too bitter. I mean, we had 2 Georgetown players come with us on a Big East trip, and they were told not to talk to the Syracuse coaches on the trip. And it was a 2-week trip. So after about 4 days, we said, look, you guys, you can talk to us. We won't tell anybody from Georgetown that you talked to us.
Coach, it took a little while. Gene Smith, God bless him, at least he helped break the ice and has been a very good peace broker. So, you know, deep down, there's some good guys over there. But boy,
they're good guys. They're all good guys. I think they're all good guys. They just had that. It was instilled in them. They were not to talk to anybody on the other team. We had guys that were friends with a couple of Georgetown players, and they went to talk to them, and the Georgetown players slammed the door. Said, no, we can't talk to you, and slammed the door. I mean, it's just the way it was. That's the way the program was run there. And, you know, it worked for them. And, you know, but I mean, it was different.
You know, it was funny, Coach, because when we had Gene and Billy Martin on, you know, we were all laughing and joking about whatever we were talking about. And at some point, Gene just stopped the conversation. He said, hey, Billy, we shouldn't be here with an Orangeman and a Wildcat laughing like this. We're going to ruin our reputation. Maybe we should growl into the camera and make a mean face or something. And
when Patrick hired Lewis Orr, John Thompson walked into the room and said, what are you doing? And he was not kidding. He was dead serious. You're bringing a Syracuse guy down here? And Patrick had to explain to him how he knew Lewis and, all this and that. But yeah, I mean, that was a real thing for a long time. And there was always that, even at the end, John, you know, he wanted to beat Syracuse more than anybody even at the end. That's just the way it was.
I got to ask you a little bit. I want to ask you a couple of questions. 87, was that your first Final Four as a head coach?
Yeah, that was it. First one. We'd had good teams, but hadn't gotten there, and everybody said I couldn't get there, couldn't win a big game, and all that.
Yeah.
And, we ended up beating North Carolina, #1 seed in the regional, to get there, and should have won the tournament. We just messed up the end of the game. We had a lead and missed a couple of free throws and missed a couple of layups. It was just crazy. Indiana, I mean, they shouldn't have won the game. They won, but we should have won the game, and that was a heartbreaking loss. And I never got over it until 2003 when we won in New Orleans, and I kind of got over it. It took 16 years to get over it.
Back to the scene of the crime. I remember sitting watching that game, Coach, because you got me tickets. So I was sitting there, and I was at the top of the removable stands that they rolled in the Superdome.
Yeah.
And I remember the game being over, and I remember sitting there, and everybody had emptied out, and I just was frozen. So I know what you felt like, because
we outplayed them. They were favored, but I thought we had a better team, and we missed 2 open threes. With a 6-point lead, and it wasn't like it was a 2-point game the whole way. We had a lead, and we missed a couple free throws at the end that would have ended it. It was just one of those things that you just think about forever. And if you lose a close game, it's close the whole way. But when you get control of it and you have the lead, those are harder games. And you remember the losses forever. The wins, you don't always remember the wins that much, but you do remember the losses. That's part of the coaching legacy that you live with. They're hard, some of them.
Yep. Now I got. So let me ask you this, because I know, being a Syracuse guy, and the fans, great fans, and then of course the fair weather fans, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot. The thing you have to understand, there's about 200 negative people that go on post. Maybe not even 200, because some people have 5 names that they post on. But even if you give it 200, and that's what we had this year, about 200 during the season when we were struggling. Well, we have about 1 million fans around the country. I mean, literally, not only in Syracuse where we have 30,000 people come to the game, but we get the 35 TV share. I mean, we get 100,000 people watching our games in Syracuse. So there's 1 million fans. And if there's 200 are going to do that, I mean, that's what you have to understand. That's who it is. And it's ironic, but out of those 200, 190 of them don't even come to games. They watch at home and they pick apart the team, but they aren't season ticket holders. They may come once a year, but they're not supporters of the team. So you just cannot give those people any legitimacy at all. And sometimes I react to them just because they're so far off base.
Yeah.
But this year the most prominent guy wanted Buddy to sit, during the year when he was struggling. Well, he was struggling because he had COVID. He couldn't get his release. He couldn't get his legs in it. And, he wanted him to be benched. And, Buddy gets us to the tournament at the end, gets us in the tournament, and gets us 2 wins in the tournament almost by himself. I mean, he just had 2 phenomenal games. It was incredible. And, but the fans didn't want him to play, so usually the fans are proven wrong, the negative people. They can be right once in a while, but normally they're wrong. And this is what we do for a living. It's what we've done for years. And most of the time what we do works. It may not be perfect, but it works as well as it can. Right. There's a year you might win 18 games, and it might have been the best coaching year you ever did to get to 18. There's another year you might win 30, and you think, well, maybe we should have done something better this year.
Well, Coach, you got well over 1,000, so I think we'll
pretty good.
I think we'll follow what you're saying. I think after 1,000, I think we could say, all right, guy's got a pretty good idea.
It's funny how the guy in the 20th row, coach, knows more than you do, and you know.
Yeah, it's part of America though. The
It is.
Yankees. Now I'm a Yankee fan. They're playing bad. They want Bonefire. They want Hicks bench. They want this. You know, I mean that's just the way it is. You know, fans are going to be fans, and I mean, and it's not like they don't have a point. I mean, you can make a point that well maybe this would work. Well, I can't do my job on maybe. I've got to do my job on what I think is the right thing to do, and based on a lot of experience. And if I see a guy like Buddy was shooting, I know he's going to make shots. It's just he's got to get healthy. He's going to make shots, and that will. If I take him out of there, and we don't have him there to make shots. Well, we don't even get in the tournament. So you have to understand the whole picture, and usually it works out right, and we get to where we need to get to. But, you know, we've struggled. We haven't been that good. I mean, we haven't been quite good enough the last few years, but we've had great success in the tournament. And, I mean, we've been, you know, in the ACC the last 6-7 years, they keep saying, well, you've been 5th or 6th or 7th in the league. Well, Duke, Carolina, Virginia, and Florida State have been in the top 10 in the country over the last 5 or 6 years. That's where they've averaged. They're right in the top 10. Right. So you could be 5th and be 20th in the country, yeah. You know, or 6th and be 25th in the country. That's not all that bad sometimes to be there. I mean, we finished 6th one year and we lost twice to Virginia, twice to Duke, and once to North Carolina, once to Florida State. Those were 6 of our 8 losses in the league. 9 losses. I think we were 10-8. Those were 6 of our 8 losses were to those teams. And you still got to go to North Carolina State. And you got to go to Miami. You know, those teams are good too. I mean, it's hard some years if you're not really good to win more than 9 or 10 games in the league. Mm-hmm. It's that good a league, but it's at the end of the day, if you have a bad league, a regular season, and a bad tournament, then that's tough to live with. But if you can capitalize and have a good tournament, kind of equals things out, makes it a good year.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Buddy and him playing and some of these Boo Birds having their say or whatever. Talk about the relationship and what it takes to coach your own kid. I mean, right. Pete Maravich and Press Maravich was one that I remember. Closer to home for me, R.C. Massimino played for Coach Mass. You know, I'm not comparing players to anybody, but I mean, it's a difficult thing, and it's tough on both guys. It's tough on your son, and it's tough on you because your son has to, you know, there is stuff said in the locker room. Not everybody loves you all the time, Coach. I mean, you know, things are said, and you know, he hears that stuff, and then maybe goes home for dinner, and he hears you talking about, you know, this, you know, Sonny Spera didn't do what he was supposed to do at dinner, you know, but he can't go back to the other party and say anything. So talk about the relationship, and now Jimmy's coming in.
Right.
Talk about the relationship and how that all works.
When Buddy comes home, we don't talk about the team. I don't say, well, this guy. I mean, we may say something about a game or, you know, that we need to rebound better or something, but we don't talk about the personnel. And I think the players are smart enough around him to know they're not going to just criticize me in front of him. He's respected on the team. He's a hard worker, the hardest worker on the team. That's always good. But he's respected for what he can do on the court, and he's a quiet kid. He's a good kid. He doesn't say anything. So that's important. You know, your son either has to be one of the best players on the team or the worst player on the team. You know, if he's in the middle someplace and they can say, well, maybe he's playing, maybe he shouldn't play so much, that's when you have problems. I mean, Tubby Smith had a huge problem. His son was playing. They weren't very good. He wasn't a great player, but he was the best guard he had.
Right.
So he played him, and people criticized him. But they didn't have it wasn't like he was keeping somebody else out. You know, he was the best guard. I remember Al McGuire played his son. He had a really good player in his son's position. And the player went to Al and said, I'm just as good as your son. And Al said, yeah, but to play, you got to be better. You're not going to play if you're just as good. But Buddy's, you know, he's the best shooter, one of the best shooters in the country. He's proven that. I mean, last year he shot 30. He led the ACC in shooting, three-point shooting percentage, and made. So, you know, obviously he's proven himself, and this year he did the same thing. But there'll be people next year, if he shoots badly, to say, well, you shouldn't be playing.
Did it change your relationship with him, Coach?
No, we've always been close. You know, we play golf together in the summertime. We really don't talk that much about basketball. I give him a idea. Like yesterday, he was working out, and I just gave him an idea of what I think he could. He's probably one of the most amazing scorers in college basketball, and that he scored 16 points a game from the field and 2 points from the foul line a game. There are almost no scorers that do that. If you remember, Chris Mullen was a great scorer. He averaged 24 points a game in the Big East, right? He only scored 14 points from the field.
Right.
Chris averaged 10 make free throws a game. That's how you become a great scorer. To score 16 points on field goals is incredible. Buddy was in the top 5 in the league in scoring, and he got 2 foul shots a game. That is, he needs to learn. Some of it he kind of avoids because he's bigger and he shoots over people.
Right.
But he's got to learn when to fake and wait and get fouled sometimes. And he's learning that, but it's still not there. But that's something he's working on. He works out right now in the off season 5 or 6 days a week, minimum.
Yep.
During the season, he plays every day. Even when we take a day off during the season, mandated, he works out, either in the weight room or shooting. So I'm proud of him because he's made himself into this player. He didn't just have talent. He was not one of his better AAU team players in his young years. He got better near the end. But it's because he worked with our strength coach from 9th grade on. And
Right.
that's how he got there. And Jimmy's done the same thing, and he'll be here. But yeah, I mean, there's always something about having your sons playing. Somebody likes another player. I think the last 4 years we've had consensus on one rate with 2 or 3 people on the radio that this guy shouldn't have played, and I played him, and this other guy should have played. And in each case over the 4 years, the other 4 guys didn't pan out. They weren't good players, but that's who they liked. So that's just part of it, and why you can't listen to that. You know, Marv Levy said it best: when you start listening to the fans, you'll be sitting with them.
Yeah,
Exactly right.
You know what? You know what's amazing, Coach? I got to tell you, just listening to because of just frame what you've said, right? Talking about, because big fish, little pond, right? So you are underneath a microscope in everything you do, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but you see it, right? And for you to just roll with it is really admirable and so awesome, because it's tough, and it's, like you said, when you're not winning, it makes it harder because
Well, it bothers you. I mean, it does bother you. I'm sensitive. I mean, I say publicly, well, it doesn't bother me. I don't listen to this. I don't. But I mean, you hear it and it bothers you. But it is what it is. You signed up for this, and all coaches are going to get criticism. Probably in smaller markets, you get more because it's the only game. If you're coaching in a city, they're more worried about the pro teams and football, baseball, whatever it is, and so it's different. But yeah, in a small town. But the other side of the coin is you have great fans. They support the team. We raise more money through our charity than any coach in the country every year.
Yeah, your Coaches versus Cancer is just off the charts.
Close to $1 million a year, and
Off the charts.
we're in a small town, so there's advantages and disadvantages from being in a smaller town. But at the end of the day, after it takes you about 30 some years as a head coach where you kind of really just put it down. You don't listen as much. The first 30 you listen too much. I still listen a little bit. It still bothers me sometimes, but not as much as it used to. You get kind of used to that's what's going to happen, and you certainly like to always exceed the negative people's reactions to things, and we've been able to do that.
What else is beautiful, Coach? If you get asked a question, you're going to say your answer and you're going to speak your mind. It's so refreshing, and I'll have somebody say, "What?" I say, "Well, they asked a question. Yeah. That's the answer."
But when you give the answer that they don't want to hear, it's a little negative. Then they say, "Well, you shouldn't say that." And I said, "Well, then don't ask me the question.
Don't ask me the question.
I'm going to give you the answer, and if it's bad and you don't have any reason or there's no fact behind that, I'm going to explain. I want to say that to you, but writers say and media people say they want you to do that, but when you do it, they don't like it.
They don't like it.
They don't like it. As simple as that. And everybody says coaches are a little thin-skinned, which we have some of that. The media is the most thin-skinned people on earth. If you just give them one criticism, they react forever with it. And,
yeah, they run with it.
We get it every day. I mean,
Yeah.
it's part of life. But yeah, they don't like it. And, some people think I shouldn't do that, but hey, it's just the way it is. And I think fans realize I'm going to tell them what I think is the truth. And I mean, they can disagree with it, but it's going to be what I think is the truth. And I'm not trying. Lou Carnesecca was the best. He never answered the question. They'd say something negative and he'd just talk about the weather. They'd say, well, Lou, why didn't you play this guy? And Lou Carnesecca would say, it was so nice outside walking in here today. I just couldn't believe how nice it was. What a nice day it was today. And when I hear that question, I go, well, you don't know what you're talking about. He's the best player, But Lou was right, and all the media love Lou. But he never did answer the question like that, ever.
Coach, one last question for you. I think we would be remiss if we didn't ask you this. Yesterday was the 5th anniversary of Pearl's passing, as you know. And, talk to us about what Pearl meant to you, to the university, and to the Big East Conference.
Well, first of all, Pearl Washington was one of the nicest kids I've ever known for a superstar. I mean, he was a superstar. He didn't even have any care about that superstar. His brother really made him play basketball, and he played because he was good at it, but he didn't love it. But Pearl was the nicest. Everybody loved Pearl. I mean, people that didn't even know anything about basketball, he was just so gracious and so nice to everybody. On the court, he was a singular talent. He played with an excitement that nobody else did. He was the most exciting player ever in the league. And not the best, probably not even maybe wherever, top 10, I don't know. But the most exciting player. And people watched the Big East, and Patrick was there and Chris Mullin were there. They were the greatest players in the league, in my opinion, the 2 greatest players. But people didn't watch for them. They watched Pearl. I mean,
yeah.
Timmy Hardaway said, I couldn't wait to watch Pearl. I watched Syracuse. I want to watch Pearl Washington play. All the great players, young great players, I watched Pearl Washington play. That's who they tuned in for. In California, they tuned in to watch Pearl Washington play. I went to LA before Pearl came here, and I went to the biggest basketball school in LA. They didn't know where's Syracuse. They had no idea. When Pearl played after his freshman year, I went to LA, and in the airport, the baggage handler said, hey, you're Pearl's coach. They knew because of Pearl Washington. And he made the Big East along with those other guys and the coaches. But Pearl he was the most exciting player I've ever seen. He electrified buildings. He really wasn't even a good shooter. That's what hurt him in terms of the NBA. 15-foot range at best, but he could go by anybody. Georgetown had the greatest defensive team I've ever seen. They held people to 44 points. Pearl had 27 points and 10 assists against them in the Garden. Gene Smith, Michael Graham, Patrick Ewing, Billy Martin, David Wingate. They had nothing but pros, and Gene Smith was probably the best defender that played in the Big East. And Gene Smith, I don't know what he said when he was on, but he could not handle Pearl Washington. And
that's probably exactly what he said, actually.
I mean, no one. You could get in the phone booth with him, and he's going by you. He put some moves on people. He got one in Carl Hobbs once at half court in Connecticut. He went left, right, and Carl went backwards, right on his tailbone. He just what? I mean, he was an exceptional, exciting player, and he was a great human being, a great guy, and he's a legend for a good reason. He's a legend for a reason. There aren't that many legends in my mind, and he's a legend. If you look back at the Big East history and you had to pick out one player, I mean, it'd be hard not to pick out Pearl Washington. It would be really hard. And that's coming from players, Kenny Smiths and all the guys that played against them. One year, point guards in New York City were Kenny Smith, Mark Jackson, two or three other really Kenny Hutchinson, really good players in Pearl, and they all watched Pearl. I went to the game in the end of the year, the Wheelchair Classic, and it was about a 3,000 seat building. I went there at 5 o'clock, and there were people lined up outside. Pearl didn't play till 9 o'clock. They were waiting outside to see Pearl Washington play. And when he came on the court at 9 o'clock, the place went electric. And he went for like 48 as a sophomore against the seniors in the Wheelchair Classic. And people were I've never seen anything like it. Just the guy was electrifying. And he was that good when he was a sophomore in high school. He was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to even talk about him without just saying, well, I mean, I never watch a player during a game on my team. I'm trying to watch the game, but I watch Pearl Washington. I watched him play.
That's a great compliment. It's true. But what's so interesting, Coach, and having played with Pearl and practiced with him and being a part of his world for that time, they're definitely you couldn't hit the nail on the head any more perfect. He just had an aura but it was just him. Yeah. It was just who he was, and it didn't matter if you came up, if you were a custodian, if you were a baller, if it didn't matter. He had time for you, just like he had time for you, and he was so private and personal and humble, and that's not what you'd expect. You'd expect like the GQ and the that's just not
the opposite of what you'd expect.
Exactly.
He was loved by everybody. Everybody that played with him, everybody that played against him, they all loved Pearl.
Yep.
They all did.
Well, what a great way to end this unbelievable discussion, Coach, with talking about the great Pearl Washington. And Sonny and I can't thank you enough. It's been a real honor and a pleasure having you here and chatting with you for a little while and being able to
talking with you guys. They're great memories. I mean, there'll never be anything quite like what we went through with that Big East era. It's I think people know that, but I always some people that weren't there, they wouldn't quite understand it. But if you were there, you understand it. It was one special time in college basketball.
100%.
Well, thanks again. We totally appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Right.
Coach, I gotta ask you before you go.
Yeah.
With coaching your kids, right? Because I coach my girls.
Yeah.
I almost got a chance to coach against your daughter. We lost. We were supposed to. We were so close. She was a freshman then. But were you nervous a little bit about because you can't coach your kids right until all of a sudden in college.
I'm always nervous because as a parent, you want your kids to do well.
Right.
And so that part of you is there. As a coach, you got to get your team to play well, and that's what's important, but you still want your kid to play well. So within a game, I feel better when Buddy plays well. I feel better, about the game. If we win, he's happy. He just wants to win. If he gets 10 points and we win, he's happy. If he gets 25 and we lose, he's not happy. He wants to win. And
I know where he got that, Coach.
That's all he cares about. Trust me. Jimmy and him saying, Sissy has it over the family. She won 3 state championships in a row. And, she has that over the family, and she talks about it once in a while. She was a good player. She was a good player.
He was a great player.
She was good, but she has that whenever they talk basketball. But it's different coaching your kids. You want them to do well. But you still, as a coach, you want to win the game. That's what you got to do. And both Buddy and Jimmy want to win. That's what they care about. They want to win. And Buddy gets sad when we lose. Jimmy gets mad. So, we'll see how it all works out this year. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, lots of luck. Congratulations.
Good luck, Coach.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Catching up with you.
Yep. Thank you.
Take care.
You've been listening to the Big East Rewind with Sonny Spera and Chuck Everson. The Big East Rewind was produced and directed by Nick Chico Chorus and Daryl Gurney. You can check us out on YouTube, or you can see us listen to us in Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcast from. You can also send us an email if you have any suggestions, comments, or anything. We're open to all of that stuff, and we will answer them. Sonny and I do answer the emails. You can get us at bigeastrewind@gmail.com. Once again, thanks again for joining us. Have a great day.